Okay. My name is Ryan Sakoda. I started about 6.5, 7 years ago out in School Hard Knocks with Jesse Hernandez. He actually gave my break in the business. Probably about a year or two there. Then I came here to UPW. Then basically from there, I basically got a break in Japan with Shinya Hashimoto, his company 01. Unfortunately, he passed away, and I was actually in Japan during when he passed away, and that really bothered me because he really was one of the main guys in the business who actually believed in me and gave me a shot, which other promotions didn't. And to this day, his loss was one of my, to this day, I'm still hurt by his loss. But just like anything else, we got to move on. And I'm sure, just like anything else, he would want everyone else to move on too. So.
How long, or what was it like? How was it like training to be a wrestler? Was it very hard?
You know what? The one thing about wrestling is you have this dream to be a wrestler. At least for me, the great thing about wrestling is everyone has a different story to tell. Everyone has a different reason why they got into business. But the majority of the guys who are in the business and who are successful in the business, majority of them truly loved wrestling. And that was my case. I love wrestling ever since a little kid. My idol growing up was Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. And I could tell you tons of stories. I used to, run around the house with a bandana around my head. And it was just one of those things where when I was growing up, I grew up in an area mostly with white guys. So it was kind of a way for me as an Asian American to kind of, how do you say it, like have this, he was a way for me to get, I felt a little bit more accepted. It's strange, but it's true. And he was able, we would play wrestle, and we would always pick who we wanted to be as wrestlers, and I would always pick Ricky the Dragon every time. And everyone would say, "Oh, I want to be Hulk Hogan." I said, "No, I want to be Ricky the Dragon." So I would give everyone, the chop and do all that stuff, and he was the main reason. And to this day, and right now he's with the WWE, and I've never met him, but I'm just really waiting for the day where I can meet him and talk to him and absorb some knowledge from him. So.
At what age did you start having the dream to be a pro wrestler, and what was that like? Like, what was your ultimate dream, like wrestle Steamboat?
You know what? No, I never dreamt about wrestling Steamboat because I've always wanted to be Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. So I never wanted to be him. The guy who I always wanted to beat was Randy Macho Man Savage, because he had that big feud with Ricky the Dragon, and then later on he had that big feud with Ric Flair, and some of the greatest matches of all time were between Ricky the Dragon and Ric Flair. And of course, WrestleMania 3, which was probably the greatest, one of the greatest matches of all time, Ricky the Dragon versus the Macho Man. That was probably, in my mind, one of the best matches of all time. But yeah, I never, if anyone, it would probably be the Macho Man, who I always dreamt about getting in there and fighting against.
What was it like accomplishing your dream and like getting signed and being on TV with the WWE?
You know what? The big thing is, it never hits you. It didn't hit me until I got there. Until you get the phone call. John Laurinaitis calls and says, "Hey Ryan, we'd like to offer you a deal, And I was just, I couldn't believe it. All that time, it was probably at that time, probably about 5 years, 5.5, years. before I got the call. And once when I got the call, it really didn't hit me until I got into my car and drove from California all the way to Louisville. And as I was driving down to Louisville, that's when it all absorbed. And I absorbed it all, and that's when it just hit me right there. I'm like, man, I can't believe it. I got a job. But that was my biggest problem, that I almost felt content with just having the job and not trying to excel and try to go to that next level. And that is the one thing that I learned the most, is that you cannot be content in this business. And I almost think that was my biggest downfall, was being content.
In the WWE, like, were there any like political problems, like with the office?
You know what? I stayed far away from that. The one thing about the business is you have to start, you have to learn to stand up for yourself. That's the one thing that I learned when I got there. There were guys that try to do ribs and do all that, but you gotta, obviously to the veterans, you can't go and make a big deal out of it. You kind of just have to brush it off and laugh it off and say, okay, you got me, and that's it, and move on. I was very fortunate. I never really got into that political game. To this day, I have a lot of friends who are still there, and I miss those guys, and I really, really want to go back. And it's, hopefully it's a matter of time. So,
what's it like? Or maybe you could explain why exactly you left the WWE.
Well, what happened was, and this is obviously my problem or my fault. Before I got picked up, I had real serious back problems. But in this business, there's a difference between working hurt and working injured, and I learned that from Booker T. And he really smartened me up. But by that time, it was too late. He told me, he goes, you have nothing more to prove. Everybody knows that your back is completely shot, and here you are still doing all these matches, and you could barely walk. And he said, bro, there's a difference between working hurt and working injured. And he goes, I guarantee you, no one here thinks you're a pussy. But that, in the back of my mind, that was the biggest thing, is that I wanted the respect from the boys. And that was probably my downfall. I should have probably gotten help. I should have went to a doctor earlier and got, maybe there was something they could have done. But by the time I got the MRI, they couldn't believe it. The nerves were completely on top of the disc, and they couldn't believe it, because it was so bad that they felt that the nerve could have been severed, and I could have had permanent nerve damage. So that's how bad it was. It got, and so when they found out that I had to do the surgery, what happened was then, about a week went by, and then John Laurinaitis called me and told me about my release. I was cool with it. I understood. Business is business. I don't have any, I don't have any problem with that. I understand the business. And now it's just a matter of me coming back. I 10.5 months of rehab that I was doing. And now I'm back 100%. Actually, now I feel better than when I first started wrestling, because 6-7 years ago, I always had some form of back pain. But now I haven't had any form of back pain at all. So maybe it might have been a blessing in disguise that got released. I don't know. But, everything happens for a reason. And, I'm just excited. Right now, I've never been this excited in my life, because now I had a taste of it. I had to taste what it was like to walk in front of 15,000 people. And believe me, when you experience that, you're hooked. You're a junkie. Just like I remember I saw a DVD with Stone Cold Steve Austin, he calls himself a junkie because it's the reaction of the fans. It's coming out, and that's that adrenaline walking to the ring, and it's just there's nothing like it in the world. And I want that more than anything in the world right now. That's my number one goal, is to get back there. So
what does a wrestler like you have to do to get back there? Like, what are your plans?
Well, obviously durability is an issue. They told me, they told me the door's open for you to come back, but obviously you got to prove your durability, which I totally understand because liability-wise and everything. So I have to prove to them that I'm durable, that I'm able to work again. It's going to take some time. I understand. It's not going to happen overnight. But I've been going to Japan, and Japan has been doing really well for me, so I'm excited with that. And that's just another step back up to WWE. So
what's it like wrestling in Japan, and how does it compare to the United States?
I will say in Japan, work rate is a lot harder. Everything is a little bit more snug. Forearms, kicks, everything is a little tighter, and which is good because for me, my style, I'm a little bit more geared to work that style. So I just think right now, I think that's a good fit for me right now in Japan.
Let's stop this for a second. How about like the creative process in wrestling? Like, do you feel that that's something that's very like it's headed in the right direction, or do you think it used to be better? Or I don't want to put you on the spot or anything, but
well, I'll tell you this. I think the one thing what's lacking is competition, and there was a lot of things that creatively back in the day that they were able to do because you had competition. So they would obviously you remember the whole WWE would go and invade WCW, knock on their door at their show. I mean, that kind of stuff was great, and get on the stick and talking about, he couldn't outwork me, It was great because there was so much more that creatively that they were able to do because there was another company that you can go and rib on. So that was the one thing that I think, which in my belief, creatively it got shortened a bit because now they're such a monopoly, and it's only in here instead of competition here, competition there. So creatively, I know for a fact they're trying their best, but it's hard. It's hard because 20 years of wrestling, WWE 21 years, and I mean, obviously you can't keep running the same story over and over and over. You got to switch it up, and that's the hard part. It's just because they've been running for so long, and they've been running TV for so long that to come up with new ideas and new things, I wouldn't want to be them because creatively, man, it's tough. I'm sure those guys have sleepless nights trying to think of ideas, but I don't blame them. I mean, right now they got their hands full. They're doing the best they can.
What would be a good question to ask you? Like, how about the internet? Like, has that
Internet?
affected wrestling?
You know what I realized about the internet? That at first, I never paid attention to the internet, and I never really cared what people had to say or whatever, criticism. But what I learned, that the internet is such a dynamic tool as far as promoting the wrestling business. I mean, guys over in India, guys over, all across the world can access wrestling and read about wrestling all the way from over there. And that was the one big thing that I did not concentrate enough on. Now, criticism is criticism. You take it with a grain of salt. If someone says, "Oh, you suck," well, that's your opinion. But I think, in my opinion, I know a lot of people don't like it because most of the times they bash on the product, they bash on this. But it's to me, it's a great tool to actually maybe sometimes work some angles, work some different angles through internet. I think it's, to me, I like it. I like the idea, But if you take criticism badly, I can see on how people truly don't enjoy it. But in my opinion, I have my skin is so thick that it bounces right off. So anything bad written about me, it just bounces right off. So it doesn't bother me.
Backstage.
Wow. The one thing that I can say is it's like walking on eggshells. Everyone is the guys who don't make it are the guys who, in my opinion, who are a little too relaxed, who really tend to, and this is coming from me, from my experience, and that was my big fault. I don't know if you remember in the beginning, I was talking about being content, and that was my problem. I think just being there was, at that time, with the back injury and everything, I was like, hey, I'm here, what more I can complain about, that was the worst attitude that I could have. And that's the one thing that if I go back there, the one thing now that I understand, that you can't be content. You can't, you have to go and you have to prove that you want it. And, because there's only few cases, I'm not going to say any names, but there's a few cases where there are people, there are cases where there are few people which, obviously they're guided and they're pushed straight from the beginning. But they're very few. That's all few and far in between, so.
Did you ever have a rib pulled on you, or did you ever rib anybody?
No.
102 reasons not to be a pro wrestler.
No. But I'm actually the guy that did that one.
Yeah.
I sent you the
I was
DVD.
thinking, appreciate it. I was thinking 102 reasons, a sequel.
Did you enjoy it?
That was awesome. I liked it. It was funny.
Oh, it's not that negative, I don't think.
That was funny. Just real stories.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm sorry.
You'll be next.
Oh yeah. So have you ever been ribbed, or?
You know what? I've never been ribbed. I've never been ribbed.
Is that something?
But now this is gonna go out, and now they're all gonna rib me. But I had a real good rapport with everyone. I mean, I don't have anything bad to say about really, really anyone. Everyone treated me really good. I think, my case was a lot different from, I think, a lot of the guys. The key is respect. And if you can go and show everyone and give everyone respect, that is the one thing that they can't take away from you. That if you respect them, hey, you know what? 90% of the time they're going to respect you back. And that's the one thing that wrestling didn't teach me. And my parents taught me that. So I never had a problem. I never had a problem with anyone. So.
Did you ever get to meet, I'm sure you did, Vince McMahon? Like, what was it like interacting with him? Like, what kind of person?
You know what? All these bad things that are said about Vince and all this stuff, I don't see it. I don't see it at all. I mean, the guy is a genuinely nice guy. You cross him, then obviously I can see where, obviously that's not a good thing to do. I'm trying to think of how many people actually got over on Vince in the end. I think Vince is the type of guy who you show him respect, you're cordial, he'll be the same right back. I have nothing but good things to say about Vince.
Did you ever have any affiliation at all with WCW? Or?
No, not at all. What happened was, back in the day, UPW was a territory of WWE. And so when I started training here, obviously WCW was still running. And I wanted to actually, at times, wanted to go over and see if WCW was interested. But I never sent in a tape, or I never even pursued it. My main thing was always WWE. So, so that was something that I always scratch my head and wonder, what if, But in the end, I guess it all worked out in the end. So.
How did when the business, when WCW and ECW folded, how did that affect the business and wrestlers?
In my opinion, it hurt the business because there was no other competition, and then, like I said, story angles and all of a sudden everything gets compressed and gets how do you say it? It gets you get limited, And then the hard thing is that you got top guys now from WCW, you got top guys from ECW now coming, and there's only so many spots on a roster, and that's where it gets real tough, because now you're gonna have to go and try to help out, not help out, but try to put on a show where you have all these top guys, and obviously someone has to go under. But I think that was that's where it kind of got difficult, in my opinion.
I just had a good question for you. Okay, 18 guys recently got released.
Yeah.
They lost their jobs in a span of 1 day, I think it was, 2 days.
Yeah.
Is there any way for the business to change to prevent stuff like that from happening, or is that just something?
You know what? No. That's the nature of the business. The business now, WWE is on the IPO, so it's a publicly traded stock. So they have to prove to the stockholders that they're making money, and the first place that goes is talent, because that's what costs the most. So that's when you have to evaluate talent and say, you know what, this guy, maybe, he can go somewhere else and get a name for him, and then he can come back. I don't think anyone that got released is exempt from coming back. I just think that much in a case like mine, they have to go and prove themselves somewhere else and then come back. So, I know a lot of the guys, I'm sure they're heartbroken and whatever, but in the end, if they really want it bad enough, it's very, very possible for them to come back. I just think that the majority of the guys, I think, that got released, I can say that a lot of them were kind of like me, very content just being there. And you can't go there with that attitude. You got to go with that hunger, that desire to be the best, to be the champ. And I'll be straight with you. I never really had that desire to be the champ. My desire was just go and try to have a good match every night. I never thought of the big picture, and that was my downfall. Just the wrong mentality. But you know what? I'm looking for that opportunity, and once I get back, you know what? They'll totally see a different person. I'll be ready this next time.
Have you ever had a totally crazy or wild experience in a match, something that you'll just never forget, something ridiculously funny, or?
I'm trying to think. Wow. Well, I don't know if I should. Well, I'll say it anyways. I don't care. But I remember one time I went and I was I forgot where it was at. It was at one of the restaurants, and I ate something that was really spicy. and I had to work that night, and I can still remember my stomach was bubbling. It was just bubbling like crazy, and I was like, oh my God. And next thing you know, it was, we did a match and whatever. During the match, and right in the middle of the match, I had to take a shit right in the middle of the match, and it was so hard just to tighten up because it wanted to come out. The crap wanted to come out, and I was like, oh my gosh, I was tagging up with the key, and I was just sitting there going like this, tightening up my butt cheeks, and like, please hurry up, get this shit over with. And that was the whole time. I was just praying like, oh God, hurry the whole time. I mean, I could obviously remember that one, but yeah, if anything, I mean, that's probably the one thing funniest story that I can think of, at least for myself, that I can think of.
What's your opinion of backyard wrestling?
You know what? I know a lot of people bash backyard wrestling, and I know a lot of people have nothing but negative things to say, but you know what? I'm different, man. Here are kids who want to wrestle, who, obviously that's not the right way to get to the WWE, but they're living out a fantasy. They're living out a dream, and they do it in their backyard. Hey, I'm not gonna criticize someone for their dreams or their aspirations, even though, in my opinion, yeah, they're doing it the wrong way. But I'm not gonna bash them for wanting to, wanting and loving wrestling. I'm not gonna bash anyone who truly loves the business and truly loves wrestling. I mean, obviously, if they're doing it for other reasons, then obviously that's where the problem starts. But the majority of these guys, I mean, they love wrestling. So anyone who loves wrestling, I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, that's a good interview.